Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Printings Alive with me, your host, Warren Werbitt. Today's guest is special, as all my guests are special, but maybe a little more special because he does things a little differently. We got Ben Glazier from Glazier Design over the pond in the UK. How you doing, Glenn?
Very good. Great to see you, Warren. It's good to catch up after a little while.
Yeah, it's been a little while. You're one busy guy, right?
Yes, it has been non-stop for the last couple of years we've been talking about doing this, haven't we?
Yep.
Since and even longer than that, possibly when we met up in Portugal. So yeah,
Well,
great
and
to
I
be
had
here.
the other podcast too, but I couldn't wait
Yeah, yeah.
anymore, so I switched the name of it and I tried again. Right. So glad that you could join us. Really happy. Of course, as always, I have all this stuff written and then I can't read it or do anything with it. So we'll just wing it. But actually, we originally met through the Xerox people or at some of
Yeah.
those events because you were the designer poster boy and I was the iGen 5 poster boy.
hmm
And then, since then you've gone on to do some great stuff, and so have I. But it's all fun. But one of the things that you're really known for, aside from great design, is you spend a lot of time in the world of stamps, right? And you did stamps for, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but like one of your better designs or bigger projects would be with Steve Hawkins.
Right. So Professor Stephen Hawking, renowned astrophysicist, probably one of the greatest names in science. Yeah. So to go back to the start of the story, so
Well,
the
hang on. That
stamps.
that 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 was your first
Mm,
great project, or one of them, before your latest great project, which we'll talk about also. But do tell
Yeah, the
us about them.
space stuff, design in space. Well, we'll come to that.
Great.
So Stephen Hawking, yeah. So we helped set up all the graphics and the brand for the Stephen Hawking Foundation, which was the body that Professor Hawking set up in his lifetime to try and achieve some specific aims that he wanted to achieve, like setting up space camps, sharing education, and whatever. So we were working with Professor Hawking on his designs. At the same time, we'd been designing stamps for the Isle of Man government. Isle of Man is that little island between Ireland and Wales, right in the
Is
middle of the
that is
Irish
that where they
Sea.
have the TT race?
Absolutely. TT races, I mean, they are known globally. People throwing themselves around that track on motorbikes. It's incredible.
My favorite, actually.
Yeah.
I
So
used I
so
used to have
we've
a
been
road bike, so
the only thing is we haven't done a set of stamps with TT bikes because they are very proudly kept by a few people who specialize in them. But yeah, so anyway, we've been designing for the Isle of Man Post Office quite a few sets of stamps, and we were working with Professor Hawking on the branding for his foundation and publicizing it. And actually, we went to the Isle of Man Post Office and said, look, maybe we could do a set of stamps with Professor Hawking. And they said, great, okay, come up with an idea and we'll look at it. So we came up with the idea of Einstein to Hawking, 100 years of general relativity, because it was that anniversary of 100 years since Einstein had started working on it. And if you look at Stephen Hawking's life, there are so many interesting parallels and special numbers. So of course what we did is, as you know from most of our sets, we hide lots of information inside the stamps. Um, we created a set of 6 stamps and they went down really, really well. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to the point where we ended up one day in the study of the governor of the Bank of England. So right in the centre of London, you've got that big Bank of England building. In there, the governor has a drawing room and the governor has a study. And we ended up in the study, and I was able to present a special book of the stamps, signed and autographed by Eddie Redmayne. It had been produced as a special edition for sale to Professor Hawking. I had
wow.
no plans of doing this. We were just there to support an event that was being done, a fundraising event. The event had finished and all the people had left, and I was just standing there. Professor Hawking's daughter, Lucy, was there. And I said, look, I've got this book of stamps. It's number 1 in the set of 250. It's for your dad. Can you give it to him? And she said, oh, no, no, you can. I'm like, what? Anyway, so
That's a moment.
went into that study. It was incredible. So the governor's study, a kind of domed, impressive place with a big desk, and Professor Hawking was getting ready to go back to Cambridge. So his attendants were getting him ready for the journey, traveling by vehicle, obviously with all the machines that kept him alive. I kind of stood there awkwardly and said, "Oh, Professor Hawking, it's a great pleasure to have worked with you on those stamps and with the foundation. And here's a special book signed by Eddie Redmayne. And I sort of kind of turned around and said, thanks very much and goodbye. And sort of went to leave. And then the machine started going beep, 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 beep. I was like, oh no, what have I done?
I killed him.
And
Shit.
no. So one of the attendants said, no, you've got to wait. He wants to say something. And so because he typed every word with his eyelid and every character and every syllable, he was absolutely shattered after giving the presentation. And so it took him a little while. I think I must have stood there for maybe 5 or 6 minutes while he typed a message, thank you very much. And that was like, whoa, hang on a second, is this real? And it really was a special moment. And funny enough, we still work with Lucy Hawking. So she's an author. She's an author of children's books. She's got a series with George, who's a young astronaut. And now her latest series of books is Princess Olivia, who investigates climate change catastrophes around the world. And so we're still working with Hawking's through Lucy. And it was probably, was it the greatest honor? Was it the greatest moment of my working life? I think so. Now, we've had some pretty amazing things, and we'll talk about the space stuff later. But I think when you meet an icon, being someone who had studied a bit of physics and stuff at school and tried to read Brief History of Time and maybe not quite succeeded, when you meet an icon like that and get to work with them and they become a normal human being that you can talk to, or the very small chances I had to address him, and it really was an amazing experience. And that's the kind of thing I try to tell students of design, that design, it can take you anywhere. It's taken me obviously to the Isle of Man, but it's taken me into special buildings in London where we've presented sets of stamps. It's taken me down over to Houston, onto the floor of Mission Control, and all kinds of places. So yeah, it's fun.
Listen, if anything, we're all responsible for our journey. So whether it's design or not design, right? If one wants to set their mind and actually do something, then we're all capable. When you're fortunate, and as you're sitting and you're talking about, presenting to him and standing there, I'm thinking, okay, like what could I ask? What could I ask? And I don't know that there's anything I could ask because I'm mesmerized by the fact that you were there. I could only imagine what it was like to be standing there, like just with your jaw probably on the ground and someone saying, close your mouth.
Yeah, sweat pouring off me. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing meaningful that I could have said other than that it was a great pleasure and a great honor to have worked on that set. But I mean, that's the other thing. So you get to meet the most interesting people. I touched on some of the space stamps that we've done, and that's a whole story in itself. So because we worked with Stephen Hawking, when it came up to the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, so Apollo 11 mission, I had a burning desire to do a set of stamps on the 50th anniversary. And so I wrote to someone at NASA, or I got a contact through someone in the space industry in the Isle of Man, wrote to NASA and said, hey, I'm Stephen Hawking's designer, and I'd like to do a set of stamps to mark the 50th anniversary of the moon landing with the Isle of Man government and NASA.
Nice intro to get in.
Do you know? I think it might have helped because 30 minutes later, I got a reply.
Wow.
And this person said, look, I'm going to put you in touch with Dave, who is one of the Apollo historians. Sure enough, put me in touch. We put the idea to the Isle of Man post office. And we got this incredible connection to a guy called Chris Stott. Now, Chris has a space company, Star Luna. Last year, he put a mission on the moon, and we'll come back to that story as well, because that's kind of amazing. So he acted as our kind of liaison with NASA, and he knew George Abbey quite well. So George Abbey was one of the instrumental people in the Apollo missions. He chose crew. Apollo 13 played a key part in bringing them home. There's a reason why I wanted to do this set of stamps, because I was born 30 minutes after Buzz and Neil got back into the command module with Michael Collins, who'd been circling the moon. So every birthday for the whole of my childhood, my mum would say, oh, you were born during the moon landing, and, I was there in labor watching it all happen. So it kind of tracked me through my life, and it became a bit of a fascination. So I've always been fascinated.
That's cool, though. That's
space.
You never know how one thing brings somebody to somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool. But how did you get into stamps though first? Because not everybody wakes up and they're designing stamps.
Well, there's another weird story. So there is an ancient livery company in London, in the city of London, called the Worshipful Company of Boyers. They are one of the great livery companies that made up the bodies that ran the city of London many years ago. I think they got their charter in about 1315, and they made longbows. And I'm a longbow archer, so I'm also a member of the Bowyers. When the Bowyers and other warrior companies got together and they wanted to mark the 600th anniversary of the Battle of Agincourt, one of the people asked me to design a logo and a website for it. So we did a really simple Agincourt 600 logo, built a website for the livery companies to track what was going on in the events over the year marking the 600th anniversary since the battle. And as part of it, we developed this logo, and there was a great big service at Westminster Abbey. And at Westminster Abbey, you've got Henry V's tomb, and he's buried in the tomb down there, quite an important person. And during a service, they brought out his helm and his buckler and his sword and paraded them down the abbey. And it was an incredible event. But to get people there, they had to send out invitations. The invitations went out through a special deal with the Isle of Man Post Office, who do special rates for things. And they wanted to do a stamp customized to go on the cover. So I got a phone call from Maxine at the Isle of Man Post Office, who said, we'd like to use your logo on a stamp. Would that be okay? I said, yes, I love stamps, and that's pretty cool. Anyway, we got chatting, and she said, okay, you're a design company. Would you like to design some stamps? And I said, yeah, I would love to design some stamps. So she gave us a test set, when our first set was to mark the 300th anniversary of the Royal Artillery, a regiment in UK. And we created that set. I went off and did a whole load of research. I will say it was our first set, and it was probably our simplest set in terms of design, because we kept to the script. You know, we divided the 300 years of the Royal Artillery up into 6 50-year segments, got uniforms from each of those segments, met up with Kate Philp, who was someone who was wounded in Afghanistan, lost her leg, and went to the North Pole with Prince Harry. You know, she was one of these incredible people that did so much for charity, and she happened to be Royal Artillery. And so we got to feature her on the stamp. Now, usually you can't put living people on stamps because anything might happen. So it's generally a not the done thing to put a living person on a stamp. We got special dispensation, and of course these stamps always have to get royal approval. Isle of Man government, Isle of Man Post Office, they have their own currency and they have their own post office, but their stamps still bear the head of the monarch. And at the time, obviously, it was the Queen. So the Queen had to personally sign off on every single set of stamps that we did. We had to go through some hoops to make sure that, you know, this putting a person on a stamp because they're there forever was going to be okay, but the Queen approved it. So our first set of stamps went out there. And our next set was actually the Stephen Hawking set. And most of the sets that we've done are sets that, for some reason or other, we've come up with a reason to. So, for example, the first set of NASA stamps was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, and we called that One Small Step. We then did a follow-up set, because that set ran through the Apollo missions up to Apollo 12. We then did a second set called One Giant Leap, and that ran through from Apollo 13 through to Space Lab and the ISS and the shuttle. So it kind of brought us up to date. And then last year, we actually, a year or two ago, we got to do a third set, which was Back to the Moon. And the reason we did that was because while we were in Houston in Mission Control, on the live floor of Mission Control while they were operating the International Space Station, talking to flight director and ground control, Mike Pence was down the road at another NASA facility giving a speech saying that America would go back to the moon and onto Mars. So we called our third set of stamps Back to the Moon. And again, involved Chris Stott, because his company, this space company that he's got, he has done a massive amount to do with satellites, but he's now sending missions to the moon because he's putting data centers in space.
Wow.
So anyway, so we've got these 3 sets of space stamps, you know, the 3 moon landing ones. And one of the moon landing Back to the Moon stamps was actually Chris's data center. And that data center went to the moon last year in February aboard the Intuitive Machines 2 mission. The lander, Athena, had his data center on the side. When it landed, it toppled and fell on the solar panels, so it lost power fairly quickly. Before it lost power, it managed to transmit a picture back to Earth of the legs of Athena lying with the feet pointing up, and the Earth in the far distance, and you can see the surface of the moon, and you can see it on moonlandingstamps.com. And that one picture that came back to Earth from that data center, the reason why it's so special is that before it left, Chris loaded all of our sets of stamps onto the data center.
Wow.
So on the surface of the moon, all of our space stamps, so we did a set for the 50th anniversary of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and we did all the other NASA stamps. They are all sitting on the surface of the moon. And I must admit that the day that landed and we got safe confirmation and the image back that they'd landed on the moon, I must admit that I did go to the pub and have a little celebration and then walk home staring up at the moon thinking, I've got work up there. And it can't ever be destroyed because it's on the surface of the moon. Who's going to go and nick it? The
Wow.
only thing that could damage it is if an asteroid kind of like smashes a data center. But I think it's probably going to last as long as I'm alive. So that was fun. That was a little bit of
that's pretty cool. That's almost surreal to be connected with those people and the group,
Yeah.
and then to do the design, and then like to actually watch the rocket going up. If you watch some of that, you're like, hey man, there's part of me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the weird thing with stamps is that you do get this little bit of immortality because stamps go into a global register of stamps that's basically there forever because they are a little bit like currency. So yeah, that was really fun. Now, the interesting thing is, and you mentioned it earlier on, Oceans to the Stars, Chris's wife, Nicole, is a NASA astronaut. So the NASA connection went on.
NASA astronaut. Okay.
NASA, yeah, she flew on space shuttle, couple of missions, but she also spent 104 days in space. She was on the ISS. Incredible astronaut, engineer.
Wow.
But she's also a deep sea diver. She's been down to some of the deepest depths that humans have gone to in the
that's
ocean.
Like the two extremes.
Right.
And you can't do that in the same day, or you're going to get the head bends.
Exactly. So I think she spent about 18 days underwater and in the deep sea. So she's an incredible ideas person. She also painted the first watercolor painted in space. So when she was aboard the ISS, she painted a watercolor. And there are pictures of her online. If you Google Nicole Stott watercolor, you'll see her holding up a picture called The Wave. And the wave was like a kind of coastal image with movement of water in it. That was the first watercolor painted in space. And she's one of these people that lives to connect art and science. And she really lives it because she's got a foundation Space for Art. She works with children, doing artistic projects with children that then also end up sometimes in space. So Nicole and Chris, both incredibly intuitive, intelligent, and obviously we got chatting, and then this idea came out about From the Oceans to the Stars, which is the most recent set of stamps that's just come out. And what that really is a journey from the deepest ocean out into space. So the first stamp is down in those deep, deep waters, and the Schmidt Institute got this incredible picture of a blue glass octopus. And this octopus is translucent. The next picture takes us up to kind of coastal waters around the Isle of Man. And there's a nudibranch, which is like a little life form that effectively feeds all the other larger life forms. We then go up to one of those larger life forms, which is an albino whale. Matt Porteous, royal photographer, took this incredible image of an albino whale. And then as we kind of get up to the surface of the waters, we then move out to, on the fourth stamp, a picture of the Isle of Man taken from the International Space Station. And it's this little jewel set in a sea of silver, and it's just glowing, and you can see the curve of the Earth as it, and the shimmer of the sun as it shines off the ocean around it. And then we move further out again, and one of the most famous NASA pictures is the blue marble, Earth taken on one of the Apollo missions from a great distance, and it just looks like a blue marble that you could flick or spin, and one of the NASA astronauts kind of referred to it as that. And then we turn round in the last stamp, and look out towards the Trifid Nebula, and it's a picture from the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, and they let us use it in the stamps. So you've got this journey from the deepest ocean up through ocean waters, up into space, looking back at Earth, and then looking out at our future, at our destiny, out amongst the stars. And there's this thing that astronauts experience when they go into space and come back, particularly if they spent a bit of time out there, is called the overview effect. And it is where an astronaut looks at the Earth and then suddenly gets this realization that everything that ever was and ever will be for humanity is kind of enclosed in this space that they can see with a tiny thin blue line about it. And they realize the fragility of the planet and everything about it. And it kind of occurs to them, well, why are you fighting? And the way Nicole put it was to say that actually the whole world, we're all crewmates on the same spaceship traveling through the vastness of space at 18,000 miles an hour or whatever it is. It's a fast speed that we're moving through the galaxy. And it's a philosophical moment. And Frank White, I think it was, who was the author of the book, is a space philosopher. And it's an overpowering effect. And you can only get the merest glimmer of it when they talk about the effect that it has on their life and the importance of life on this Earth. And maybe it'd be a good idea if everyone kind of left the Earth for a little while, saw how valuable it was from a distance, and then got to come back and realize, yeah, actually, we shouldn't really be fighting, should we?
No, and also to realize how big the world really is, right? Because we sit on this planet just looking up at the clouds, the sky, the sun, the moon. Actually, the other night I had out the Google Sky, and I said to someone, "Is that a star?" And it was really, really bright. And when I took out Google Sky, turns out that I was looking at Venus and Saturn.
This a few days ago.
2 days ago.
Yeah, so they were really bright.
Yes.
And we were walking home from the pub, as a bit of a theme there. We were walking home from the pub the other night, and I pointed them out to a friend, James, and said, look at those two. And so he put his phone up to them and identified them, and really bright. But this whole thing with space, I mean, again, it's taken us to crazy places. So doing graphic design got me into that mission control. It's got our design to the moon. A few weeks ago with Nicole stamps, Nicole's charity, Space for Art Foundation, and one of the other groups involved, an ocean preservation group, took over the big screens at Piccadilly Circus, and they included all the images from our stamps in a 10-minute looping 90-second video that incorporated the stamps and kids' drawings and stuff, and the logo that we created from the oceans to the stars sits on the screen for the entire thing. Now, my office has been within 600 yards, I think, roughly, of Piccadilly Circus for the last 27 years. And Angie, who runs the business with me, my wife, came down to London. We went and watched and stood opposite the big screens at Piccadilly Circus while this video looped. And I was like,
just going, wow.
Yeah, it's like another moon moment. It's like, oh, that's our design up there. That's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not saying I'm retiring or anything, but
no, but it's leaving all that aside. That's like, a little bit of recognition, a little bit of self-fulfillment.
Yeah,
and one has to be proud of what they've done, because not many people get to stand in that place.
This is true. You've got to be a little bit careful sometimes. Sometimes I have to pinch myself and think, how on earth did I get here? And actually, because I give talks to students in university occasionally, that kind of comes up of a question. It's like, oh my God, how did you go from just being doing design or PR or marketing and things like that to getting stuff on the moon? There was no intention there. There was no great ambition. It just happened because
you put it in the universe.
Yeah, basically, because every piece of work we approach, we challenge the brief, try and do more. You know how our brains work, you and me, we're kind of on a similar thing. Why do something simple when you can make it really, really complex? Right? And add so many layers.
I don't have enough trouble in my life that I want to add just a little bit more.
So when we did a set of stamps for 100 years of the RAF, now, why did we do that one? Well, I realized that the anniversary of the RAF was coming up. My grandfather was a 20-minuter. He flew Sopwith camels in the First World War, and his war lasted 2.5 weeks. At 17 years old, he went to ground training, was shipped over to France, got shot down a couple of times in a period of 2 weeks, survived, managed to get back over the lines. Basically, his job was in a little Sopwith Camel plane, which is made out of balsa wood and canvas, I think, was to fly along the trenches, taking photographs down into the trenches to spot German positions. And of course, their job was just to shoot up at him as he flew over in a not very fast aircraft. So anyway, he got shot through the leg on the last time he got shot down. His war lasted 2.5 weeks, but the reason those guys were called 20-minuters was because the average life expectancy was 20 minutes when you were in the air.
Right.
You know, they were basically cannon fodder. But he survived, made it back, lucky because he was only 17. So I wouldn't have been around if he hadn't. So anyway, I wrote to Isle of Man Post Office and said, look, can we do a set around the 100 years of the RAF? And they said yes, put it together. Every time I have to kind of put together a proposal and say why it's a good idea, why I haven't completely gone mad. We put the idea in and we got to work with the RAF Benevolent Fund in the UK. So first we went to the Ministry of Defence, got approval from them to access records and photographs and use the MOD image database. Then we went to work with the RAFBF so that they could get some kind of benefit out of the stamp issue, chose the 8 great aircraft leading over the 100 years of the RAF. And the first one obviously being a Sopwith Camel, going all the way up to the F. And we didn't just put the aircraft in the stamps, we also hid GPS references to airfields that were associated with those aircraft. We put medal ribbons on the bottom left-hand corner. Down at the bottom, we put the name of someone who was important to the RAF. So crammed into this tiny 40mm square, about 8 layers of information.
Wow.
So if we go back to why do I do this? I do it because it's fun. This is not really commercial. You know, our main work is commercial graphic design for big companies and small companies. But this, for me, is absolute fun. It's immersion. I collected stamps as a kid. I don't anymore, but I've got enough on the shelf now. But I just enjoy that creative streak of taking the concept of something that is really, really large and reducing it down to the tiniest piece of design that you can pretty much do, and yet keeping in it a story and meaning and a benefit to others, so that when people look at the stamps and when they go, I wonder why there's a Spitfire on that stamp, and who's squadron leader so-and-so, you know.
It's the
I want them to look at
it's the smallest storybook.
Exactly. Yeah, every stamp should tell a story, and you get really plain stamps, you know, country definitives that are just in the UK, obviously the King's Head now. But stamps have always been objects of beauty. You think like Fiji and places like that, where they produce these gorgeous stamps. So to me, they're like summing up the skill of storytelling and design in the smallest thing. You know what the hardest thing to do when you're trying to tell a story is not get 10,000 words on a page, it's to drill it down to 100 words. And it's the kind of the same process with those stamps.
Yeah, get the point across and keep it minimal.
Yeah.
But it's
I mean, it's kind of sad that, you know, the world is changing and stamps will not be used probably in 30, 40 years' time. And people may not collect them anymore.
I was just at the post office because every time I get an order on the printwhisper.shop, I write a thank you card. And then but you're not licking stamps anymore. You're just peeling and sticking because they're using adhesive. So I miss the taste. But what are you going to do?
Funny enough, I don't miss the taste because I kind of started my career in PR, and that was a process of sending out about 300 press releases a day, and you'd end up with gum all over your hands. And if you were lucky, you had a little pouch that had a sponge in it, a wet sponge, and you tear the stamp off, put it on, and then slap it on. Do that 300 times. You're just covered in gum, and it ends up in your mouth, on your cup, and everywhere.
I'm laughing because when I got into print, my first print job, or one of the first jobs we had, was like a 1,500 piece mailer, and I was in it new. I didn't know anything from anything.
Did you lick all the stamps?
not only lick the stamps, probably lick the envelopes closed. But nobody even told me about the bank where they have the sponge for counting money, which is the same sponge. And at the end of the day, it's like my
Yeah,
tongue was swollen, and that's why I made fun of the taste. I don't ever want to
yeah.
lick another stamp again. But I think,
Self-adhesives, right? So this is another interesting development. Self-adhesives are great because what that's also given the ability to do is to have a self-adhesive sheet of pre-cut, so kiss cut sheet with a template that you then create a design for that template, and you can print them digitally. So usually they were lithographic work, it was offset printing, many colors, perfect registration, and the change with digital printing, the ability to do short runs of stamps has meant that we can pretty much customize them. So you can do, because of variable data, if you design something in InDesign, you can use variable data, populate the sheet with unique numbers, unique messages. Theoretically, you can do one sheet of stamps for a person. So with their name on it. Now, of course,
actually, I think here in Canada, I think the post office does that for people as a
smilers. Yeah.
Yeah, and people buy them for if they have a party, if they're doing something, or for whatever their reason is.
But it's interesting. So you're talking about like doing marketing mailings. What is the one piece of marketing with a guaranteed 100% open rate? It's a hand-addressed envelope with a real stamp on it, because who would not open that, right? It could be a Christmas card from your gran with £5 in it, or it could be a personal letter of thanks from someone, but you're not going to just bin it, are you? Because if it's hand addressed and it's got a real stamp on, that means someone physically did that, not a machine. Someone physically did that.
Well, it's not only physically did, they took the time to do it. That's what I think that. I mean, listen, I open up anything that has my name on it. When I see a handwritten letter, I'm like, oh my God, who sent me something? And I'm actually excited. I'm excited before I open it because it is handwritten, and only to find out there's something folded in there that's machine made.
Some evil marketing person has just used the greatest piece of marketing to
and then I'm like, damn, you got me again.
Yeah.
But so that's that's good for people listening that do direct mail. Offer up to your customers the idea of handwritten envelopes and track how many more openings you get versus the machine made.
That would be really interesting. Type. And then also employ a 17-year-old who has no clue that you shouldn't lick these things and stick them on there. Give someone a job. Give someone a job.
And film them for like the shift while and see how they start off and how they end, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of it's everything's kind of changing.
Printing counts, printing, like the tangibility of it. It's another reason why I like stamps, because they're tangible, they're real things, they're objects that people prize. So they have value.
Question: what did it feel like when you were on the floor of Mission Control? Because I only see anything I ever see about Mission Control is on a screen somewhere or a video or something I'm watching. But
right. So not only did I grow up as someone who was born during the moon landing and constantly reminded of it, I also grew up a completely mad Bowie fan. So obviously the person I wanted to talk to was ground control. And we went into Mission Control. So we were with George Abbey and the current director of, so George Abbey's a former director of Johnson. And we went in with then current director of Johnson, and Chris Stott was there as well. And we went in, and the first desk they took us to was ground control. So I got to talk to ground control, and she was fascinating. And then we went back to see flight director right over at the back of Mission Control. And you can watch NASA TV, or I think it just streams constantly from that Mission Control room. So you can see there's kind of two banks of desks, and then there's the great big screens ahead, and then more screens above. And those are giving constant feedback and information on position, battery power. And when we went in there, they were doing a battery change out in part of the ISS. And so there were loads of things flashing yellow, and, people like concentrating really hard on what they were doing. But having watched so many films, and being a bit of a kind of sci-fi addict as well, it was an incredible moment to be on the floor there.
I was going to ask, is it as as awesome as I would see, because I'm watching all the same films as you, and there's something about that big screen that takes up the whole wall with whatever they have going on it, and different imagery and whatnot.
I hope you've watched For All Mankind, because that is such an awesome series. A reimagining of the space race and the space story. And the tension in the rooms then was palpable, and I think it still is, because they're dealing with lives as far away from us as we can get. They have an incredible responsibility. They're constantly delivering. It's an awe-inspiring. It makes you feel very small. I think it makes you feel very humble when you look around the room and think, "Wow." I guess kind of similar to the Hawking experience, it made me feel humble and like, should I really be here?
Yeah, and
That was amazing.
everyone in the room is really tiny compared to, you're seeing the universe. Like, we're all sitting on the planet, we're all walking, doing what we do, living our lives, not really aware of much other than the stuff in front of us. And then, if you ever take a few minutes to look back and you look up, like, I always refer to us as little ants in an ant home scurrying around, and imagine every office building was glass and you could see in.
Yeah.
And that's all we're doing. And then I'm wondering about the other planet out there, because there's no way it's just us in
It
this
can't
vast.
possibly be, if you look at the billions upon billions upon billions of stars just in the known universe, and with so many billions of those having planets. I think it'd be quite arrogant of the human race to think that the entire universe was made just for us. Again, this overview effect. Just you were talking about ants in the ant hill. Well, imagine what it's like to be aboard the ISS or even further out, and you look down at Earth. So I asked the team a question, particularly Nicole. When, imagine you're on a spacewalk outside the International Space Station, okay? You're tethered to the space station and the Earth is there in front of you. We know what gravity does, but you're in a position where you're orbiting, and you're tethered. Would your brain tell you that as you stood there with the ISS behind you, just floating in space, would you fall? Would you feel like you were falling? Or would you feel like you were so distant from Earth that actually it was over there? And the part of the overview effect examines this kind of feeling of when in the future we do leave this planet. Some people will leave the planet, work on the moon, the bases they're planning to build there at the moment. They were featured on one of the stamps. They will work and they will come back. Then there will be people who leave and go on a really long journey to Mars and come back. And then there will be people who leave Earth forever because they are gone, they are going. And what will they think about Earth? What will their overview effect be? What will their thought process be around what goes on that planet? Because they cease to be Earthlings at that point. And then take that a step further and think about them having children who have never been on Earth. Are they Earthlings?
Wow, it's a good way to.
This is where it's seriously worth reading the book. Actually, I'll send you the link. I've got a battered old copy. I think it's kind of out of print. You have to buy it on eBay or one of the other things. It's quite mind opening, and you realise again just how unimportant we all are in the great scheme of things. In galactic time or whatever. We are really quite little and
Listen, I,
fragile.
I, I I think we forget, in terms of our own lives, how little we are over the course of our lives, and how we spend so much time dealing with minute, I'll just call them stupid things that waste our time, because we don't have a lot of time on the planet, right? We're here for a very short time. I'm always saying we got to figure out how to make this the best time, and who wants to argue with anyone, because it's all a waste of time at the end of the day, right? So it's we know
Spend your
we're
time the best you possibly can.
every day. I mean, it's
And
just and we'll be happier. People will be happier.
taking it back to students, this is why I love some of the things I get to do, because talking to a group of students in a university who are at the start of that working life, everything is this great opening prospect for them, whereas maybe we are narrowing our focus a little bit. For them, everything is possible. So, when they said, "Oh wow, yeah, you designed stuff that's gone into space," I'm like, "Yeah, but you have a much better chance than me of designing real stuff going into space." If you think about the future of printing, so let's look at one of the nearest opportunities for the future of printing off-world. So when we go and explore Mars or the moon, we can't ship all the materials up from here. What we're essentially going to do is build gigantic printers that will print buildings, print living accommodation, infrastructure, tools. So printing has a future. So talking to these kids in university and saying, look, actually, what I've done isn't that amazing. You guys are going to get to design for the future of humanity, because the next 40, look at where we've come in 40 years. The
In
next
20
40
years.
years. Yeah, right. So look at
And it's going faster, it
exactly.
seems.
Yeah. So they're going to get to design for the future, off-world design, and that kind of ambition. And when you see like the twinkle appear in their eyes when they realize, wow, then you think, great, you're going to have a good career.
First of all, I never thought about it like that. And when you say talk about, thinking about design for printing for the off world, that's a series of discussions unto itself.
A new
And
future awaits you in the off-world colonies.
we got to talk. We got to talk to Elon about that, right? We need his help and his financing. But no, these kids have great opportunities, and I think it's part of our job actually to let them know, to tell them to look, tell them to see, let them know that a lot of people getting older, a lot of younger people are nervous because they don't see a lot, but they're listening to the wrong people
Do you
because
know, one of the things I try to drill in is to say, always challenge the brief. And, we've kind of used this. I think you probably know Veronica Heaven, who runs the Heaven Company. She runs a competition for designers, different universities. So some universities in the UK, some in the US. And these young designers submit artworks, and it's called Briefcases, the design project. And we get to judge it. So it's designed for print. So there are industry people, there's a few designers, there's a few print companies involved. And this design for print for the future, these kids are given a brief, but my advice to them is challenge the brief. Go through the brief and look for the things that are unsaid. Why? Well, because when they get into their careers, say a client walks in and says, I want this. And if you take that literally and say, right, okay, I'll do that then. And there you go. And it's done. No imagination. What if you challenge the brief? If you go beyond what that person's asking, and because they may not know about all the possibilities of design and print, and that's why we kept on getting into those specialty embellishments talks. Sort of adding gold and adding fluorescent pink and things like that. And we still teach that, by the way. The difference really for these people is that if you challenge the brief, you are giving the customer more than they expected. They're happy. You may get a better job out of it. You're happy. The customer
it's
receiving the print at the end of the day gets more than they could possibly have expected. So they're happy. So always question, I'd say just don't take anything in life at face value.
well,
Always question it.
listen, even if you're in sales and a lot of print, and this is industry issue for me, but a lot of print, people call up, they need something, salespeople go in and they've just become order takers, and they don't offer up
Yeah.
one other stitch of thought, advice, experience. And then they go back and they quote, and then everything is just about the price because everyone gives quality and all that other bullshit. Right. But I always found when you go in and you try to have those conversations, whether they do something or not in the end is irrelevant. It's the conversation to let them know you're thinking and you'd like to push it a little. And they might not be in the mood to try it right now, but all of a sudden something happens in their business a little while later and they're like, okay, time to push it.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Right.
Jobs come back years later sometimes. They're like, oh, Ben, you were talking about that thing that you do with gold and what. Can we try that now? And of course, some people, if they've got a set budget, you can't question it, but you can always float an idea for free, because ideas, give someone an idea and they might start thinking and think, okay, you know what? Next time I'm writing, you know, a request, then maybe I'll just explore some other options. That I think that comes down to why I've had fun doing what I
Sorry,
do.
you mentioned budget. So the other funny thing about that is when you have those conversations and you bring some samples and you bring different ideas to the table that no one else has, it's rather interesting how that budget could be bumped up a little bit when somebody wants to.
Yeah, amazing how flexible it is when it matters. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
for the students, anyone entering their graphic design career or their printing career, that kind of is my direction, so that they can have fun as well. And I love watching them create. You should see some of the stuff that these 20-year-olds create. They haven't even left university yet, and they are producing stuff that I would be proud to put in front of a client tomorrow. And you can see these brains going, it's just amazing.
Yeah, part of university, at least for me, was, you probably need to have some professors like yourself that speak with the class and just don't dictate to them, because when you have a professor who's engaging you, you get more engaged as opposed to talking to you, then you just don't really think the same,
I think we
right?
all wished for that from teachers, didn't we? Always
I
the best teachers in school.
I didn't make it through university, but probably for that reason, although the only class I did like and make it through for some reason was marketing. but
Interesting.
but not I didn't go to the exam. I enjoyed the class, I enjoyed the conversation, I enjoyed the realism of talking about Colgate or Pepsi and in things I could relate to and see on the street. But that was it. The exam I didn't go to, because who read the book? It's too big, right? Okay, so just to move away, talking design today, in the world of design and print, everyone's talking about embellishments and fifth colors and sixth colors, and we get a lot of pushing from the OEMs because they're the ones who basically created it, right? We all know, I'm just curious as to what your take is, because we all know that them creating it and pushing it hasn't gone as they planned, right?
There is a gap, right? It's a mental gap. And here's how I can probably best describe it. If you think about opening InDesign 10 years ago, maybe for some people last week or this morning, opening it in CMYK, that's just kind of like a bit old school. Now you've got gold, silver, white, clear, fluorescent pink, fluorescent yellow, a whole load of effects, clear and low gloss clear, and all these specialty finishes. I think the mindset shift has to be that we don't need to design in CMYK anymore. You've got these colors as standard colors. It's not a hassle, that much of a hassle for the printers to change them out. For the designer, the mindset shift is to open their palette up from RGB CMYK to the full set. And instead of thinking, what special can I add to this job? It's like, which of these am I going to use today? Just treat them all as normal.
Well, every
And I
job
think
is a special job if you like what you
every job's
do.
a special job, but
Right.
also now that it's so accessible, why should that be treated as special?
So,
Because digital printing has come so far, but there's
right.
also the other things that you can do with it. So for example, like we were giving a talk the other day about using fluorescent pink to enhance Pantones. So if you have a Pantone in your file, not that many people use Pantones anymore because they've all moved, onto a commercial model. But if you have a Pantone in your file and there is fluorescent pink in one of the big machines, there's an automatic setting on the machine that can look at the file, identify the Pantones as spot colors, and go, right, you know what? I know how to enhance that, so I'm going to, because take my color. Like, for years we've been using orange and navy blue as our colors. My original Pantone is Pantone 021, Dutch orange, really vibrant, bright orange. For the last 27 years printing it as CMYK, it kind of comes out kind of flat. But with the enhancements that you've got on the machines now, I'm getting true
Float your pro. Right.
true Pantone 021 on digital print. So although they keep pushing them as specials, I think we need to start thinking of them as normals. They're just tools, like we were talking
I
about
like
earlier on.
that.
Yeah, tools in our tool set. Use fluorescent pink to make brilliant orange. Okay, wow, didn't know we could do that. Use silver to make a pastel shimmery blue. Well, if you go back a few years, you'd have been struggling through a Pantone book and then get
Well,
your printer to make up the ink or order it in from Pantone. But now you can kind of just do it. There's one other gap that I want to point out, is that at the moment, the software, it's not as easy to see on screen. So what you see is not what you get. So you have to have it.
actually, there's a couple people that have come out.
Hmm.
Mark G's of Color Logic
I know. Yeah.
And I want to call them out in a good way, because some of these press manufacturers, digital, they get a color gamut of, I'm going to just say 40 or 50 shades of a pink. With Color Logic software, they could take that pink and show you and print you 200 shades of it. And I don't know why, because when we met, it was the first Dygen 5 that I
That's
got
right. Yeah.
with those three ridiculous colors that you couldn't sell. But today, I don't know why, for the few dollars that it is, the OEMs are not taking it upon themselves to buy his system, put it in, and set everyone up from the get-go, because it gets harder to train or teach once it's there and it's later on, right? And then my question to you is, the OEMs are running to printers. I don't think they spend enough time with the designers, because my experience as a print salesperson, and I was selling high-end print and colors and
Yeah.
UV and all that shit. And when I would go to a client and I would suggest whatever embellishments, colors, enhancements, I would get, you're just a printer. What do you know about anything? And then when the agency would walk in and suggest the same thing I would suggest, oh my God, that's amazing. And they'll pay the price. So,
yeah.
but too
Right.
much,
So
I think.
let's get down to a basic fact on this. Printers don't sell print, designers do. And our whole relationship with Xerox over the last 8-10 years has been around communicating with graphic designers. So we've done creative projects that communicate the skills that you need to use those specialty effects direct to graphic designers rather than talking to printers. We do talk to printers as well, but one of our projects has been to train graphic designers, and we still give talks and webinars about how to use the specialty effects. But my focus in them is about changing the mindset of the designer to think these are accessible. I should be talking to my printer every day, certainly at the start of every job, to find out what special new sweets he's got in the box, to find out what new print techniques are there. And if you've got someone who's educational at the printer.
But hang on. But on that comment, I say to the printer, why are you not reaching out every day to the people that your customers are, letting them know exactly what you do? And the reason for that is most of these printers are not maximizing or utilizing the machines for what their full potential is.
There are about 5 or 6 different things that we could all do better. Designers could be more inquiring. We could be talking to our printers more. And I must admit, for whenever we've taken on a graphic designer, I don't know if you ever came over to Glenn's place in London. So they had big machines, digital presses, and they had litho presses and finishing machines. I would always get designers to spend a day or at least a few hours getting their head inside the machines so that they can get that mental click point of this is how the machine works. I think that's really important. So at one end, it's a mindset shift for designers so that when you leave university, you don't stop learning, but you carry on learning. In the industry, your best sources are the design communities, but also the printers who are running the tools that you then print on. And I think sometimes we are not inquiring enough. We're all busy. We're all working probably too many hours. How many times a day do you think, oh, do you know what? I wonder what new effects my guys have got. And actually, we should probably make more time for that. So I don't criticize anyone for not being able to sell those effects or not being able to use them, because it's just the mindset that you happen to be in. If you can be a little bit more inquiring, you will get more out of it. It's a good rule of life, isn't it? Give more, get more. If you give more time to something, if you ask more questions, you'll get more out of everything.
No, I like that. What I really like, though, is the idea that we need to change the mindset of designers to thinking in.
Don't think in CMYK.
It's not, there are no more standard colors. They're all standard. Use them.
They're all standard. You've got 11 at least. Now, if you start looking into the fluorescents and then the metallics and then UV, so one of the projects that we did as part of the webinar series for Xerox was to look at how you can use UV in alternative situations like security printing, or, so you could print an invitation that's got a message hidden behind the print in a UV ink. Now, people have been doing this for decades because of specialist UV inks. But this is accessible to every
Everybody,
designer right now.
everybody. Yeah.
So that's our tool set. We should always look at all the tools in the tool set, and then but use that at the creative point. So that's possibly another problem, is that the designer who's creating this maybe doesn't get their hands on it until slightly too late. So by the time it gets to them, there's already a really strict brief, layout, designs, whatever. The smaller companies, the smaller clients, obviously you get more chance to be creative. So I think we go also beyond the designers to people selling the design, the creative directors, and then over into the marketing directors. When everyone realizes that all of these specialty embellishments are at our fingertips, I mean, literally, you can have tactile print now, standard digital print, run a few layers, multipass it, and you start building up layers. Zoltan the
Yeah.
Magnificent, and his incredible multi-layered business cards that build up a wonderful surface. He's a guy who likes to experiment, and he's a genius. And you remember seeing his samples. We've all got access to it. So yeah, carry on
Yeah.
learning.
On the print side, I find that the printers also need to step it up to be equal to the designers in wanting to advise what they have, show what they have. There's not enough printers doing enough of their own samples or their own R&D within their own companies on their presses to see how far they could push the button.
Yeah, I do
Right?
so many hours in a day, and we know what it's like. Yeah, we'll do that on Friday afternoon, and then Friday afternoon drifts to next Friday afternoon, and the next one, the next.
Well,
So that's a
yeah, but
classic problem, isn't it?
yeah, but I've learned with that you have to schedule it as if it's a job, and the job is your
Yeah.
company, and talk about it as a job. And yes, if something comes in rush, like it's discipline.
Yeah, don't worry. In my job list, I've got at least 15 jobs for Glazier Design that we haven't done, like new website, new graphics, new this, new plumbers' pipes always leaking because they're always fixing their customers' pipes. So yeah, we do take a step back and work on the business.
And I suggest to some printers even go out and connect, team up with a designer.
Yeah.
And because everybody's busy, I say to everybody, so barter. You could do print for the designer could do design for you, but everyone should know that it's full price for everyone. So it's not a negotiation. The price is the price, but there'll be no cash leaving your hands, so there's no cash flow issue.
That's how we worked with Glenn and his guys. We had this great relationship. We were in the same building, and actually that is the very start of our story of working with embellishments, was that they got the Iridesce machine into the UK first, and they had it on testing for a few months. And the first commercial job that was run on that machine was the invitation to Stephen Hawking's memorial service at Westminster Abbey after
I remember seeing that. That was
after he
beautiful.
died. That started a dialogue with Xerox about what is it that designers need to know. And that has led years later to us now talking to designers on a regular basis, talking about specialty effects and how you can use them, new presses, existing presses. Again, I love it. I don't know, maybe I should have been a teacher. I love kind of sharing.
Better to be a part-time teacher where you can go in and give a few
and then leave before you have to do any marking.
Right, because there is no marking when you do that. Otherwise, you'd hate it after, right?
Do you know what? That's the whole thing. It's like, when does it become a job? It's like when you have to do it.
Yeah, so I fish all the time, and I have friends who say to me, "Oh, you should be a fishing guide."
No,
and no, I said the minute I do that, I'm not fishing anymore.
It's a job. Yeah.
No, but I'm not fishing. It's the people in the boat fishing. I'm just pointing.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget that. I don't
want
to
keep it fun. I mean, I guess going full circle back to the stamps, because the stamps for us are not truly commercial. It's a set government rate for them, and it doesn't reflect true commerciality. So I put as much work into them as I like, knowing that it won't affect our the price that we charge.
Well, that's a pride job. That's a pride job, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's a passion project, even though you're getting paid some. Yeah.
It is, and it is just so much fun. So I think I'm probably very, very grateful that as I get 27 years now been in business, that we have something that we can have a lot of fun with. And it takes us to other places. People see the stamps and they go, "Oh, wow, that's quite interesting," which gives me an excuse to talk to them about other stuff. marketing and campaigns, and the importance of cramming information in without cramming it in. Having a visible story, having a message that's consistent through everything.
Business today is storytelling, and too many people don't have any story,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I still start every logo, funny enough, pencil, always on my desk, pencil, paper, sketching, getting the meaning into it. And it starts with a thought process of, well, what does this company mean? Getting inside someone's head and finding out what was it that made them get up that morning and start a company, and what is it that drives them forward? What is that moment of clarity that they have every day, whether it's in the shower or whatever, when they can see their business, their empire in front of them. It's all laid out, it's all perfect, it's all working. They've got offices over here and units over there. I try and extract them from that from them, and then turn that into a pencil drawing to start off with, trying to get into the logo some of the meaning that they have in their company. That's that.
If you're not having fun doing what you do, whatever it is, it's not good, right? The more fun
Yeah,
you have, the less time you think about the time you're spending.
yeah. Well,
You're
look,
just going with it.
for me as well, beekeeping. I'm a beekeeper part-time. If that was a job, it would be a very hard job. It was 35 centigrade here the other day for about 4 days, and I was in thick trousers, a t-shirt, sweatshirt, and then a full bee suit over it because the bees were particularly stingy that day. And 35 degrees C is about 95, I think, in your money.
Well,
And
we're in Celsius.
oh,
The
yeah,
US, the US is Fahrenheit.
yeah. So it was kind of hot, and I was lugging around boxes of bees and honey, and they were trying to sting me, and I was loving it, every minute of it, because it is the absolute opposite of work. I'm there alone. If I'm stressed, the bees sense it, and they don't give any quarter. And if you're stressed, they'll be stressed, they'll sting you. So, it's the absolute opposite. Now, if someone said to me, it was like, oh gosh, you're so good at this, and you've got 11 hives. Well, if you had like 100 hives, you could probably have like an income. I think, yeah, but then I'd spend all day in really hot temperatures because it's a summer sport,
Being uncomfortable.
being uncomfortable, getting stung, and it would be a job. No thanks. So,
Yeah, no, you have to. Everybody has to watch what they wish for, right? And you have to know where to make your place and how you do certain things and how you do others. And but it doesn't matter if you're passionate about your work or your hobby, you're guaranteed to succeed. And succeed, I mean, be happy, because that's really what it is in the simplest thing. It's not always about the money, right? The money's great, and we all need it to go do our other things. But I don't think enough people are just happy with themselves all day with what with what they're doing in life. So a little bit of good work and a little passion project on the side that keeps you going gives you a whole different outlook, right? And the outlook is you get to look at the world as if you're on the moon looking back at it, but it's way bigger than the
that
space we live in.
would be an ambition. What would I say if I was offered to go to the moon? I would kind of jump at it.
So somebody I'm friendly with, was friendly loosely because I know them and we could chat here and there, but was on from Montreal, was on the SpaceX trip to the moon.
Really?
Yeah, and the station. And I think then it was supposed to be a 7 or 8 day trip, and due to some other issues, complications, not sure exactly what, it turned into a 17-day trip. And when I bumped into him, I was like, so like, how was it? He's like, I don't even know how to explain it, right? It's not something it's not something we could relate to.
So many astronauts have written books trying to explain that incredible awakening, that feeling. Do you know, there's one thing that bugs me about most sci-fi films, and and TV series, and I've watched quite a few of them, is that you always see like the crews of these great spaceships, they're all like macho and fighting and taking drugs and drinking. People like that are not sent into space. Actually, when you look at For All Mankind or other series where those people going into space are incredibly intelligent individuals. They are not the kind of fighters.
You have to be. You can't be a
Yeah.
dummy going into space. There's
And I
too many
think they're
things to
also
do.
very emotionally stable, and we
Well,
could learn
all
a lot
around,
from them.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
we could
Listen,
learn a lot from them.
the testing they do on all of them, physical, mental, or psychological, is huge. They don't just pick a person and put them in a suit and send them up. I think, for him, I think it was a year and a half, if not 2 years, of back and forth to Nassau for testing and briefing, and even throwing you in the pool with all your stuff on and seeing how long you could breathe underwater. It's all real stuff.
Yeah.
So the process, and then you have to have, of course, you have to be able to pay for that. But
Yes. And okay, so I mean, there are lots of different parameters, but what it comes back to is that those wonderful, emotionally stable, intelligent people have so much to give back to us, and we constantly hear about, the inventions that we wouldn't have if it weren't for the space race, like fireproof materials and foam mattresses and all those kind of things that are developed for the space race. But they're also, so many of them are artists. They are rounded individuals. So, Chris Hadfield playing his guitar up in space, Nicole painting in space, Alan Bean, fantastic artist. That they are, that I think they are an inspiration to us all. That's certainly an inspiration to me. And I must admit, I do some work for a couple of companies in the space and space tech industries, and work with some pretty visionary people. And again, that it's another humbling experience. You think, like, pinch yourself, like, oh wow, how did I get here?
yeah, but they're also working with you. Aside from the great design, your passion and your interest and wanting to be there, they're relating to you,
Yeah, I think
when you're
showing
talking.
yeah,
So right away, it's like when I'm talking to another fishing guy, where everything around us gets blocked out, and it's just, like, what are you fishing? How'd you catch it? What'd you catch it with? Blah, blah, blah. They get a guy or person who's into the whole space thing, the design and everything. You can get into conversations with them that they can't get into probably with the average person,
yeah,
right? Which is
yeah.
really cool. All right, we're gonna wrap it up because we'll be in outer space soon. We can go on and on and on and on. But wow, what a great conversation, and what a whole lot of learning here. I haven't spoken with anybody. I haven't spoken with anybody who's been on the space side of things, which is pretty cool. And then stamps in themselves are pretty cool. So you got a pretty good thing going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay, so we're gonna keep track of what you're up to and any other great crazy projects, and then we're gonna have you come back on so that we could talk about it. I particularly like and have learned a new way to think about additional colors and embellishments. And I'm going to quote you as I make a video probably tomorrow, that there are no more special colors. All of the colors is our working toolbox, which is what gives us, some of our advantages in what we do in print and design.
Absolutely.
So,
Learn new skills, because new skills are what's going to guarantee your job over the next few years. New skills, adaptability, new possibilities. All of this new tech is giving us new possibilities.
well, and we learned that every day something changes a little, and a small variation sends you off in another direction. Some of the greatest things invented come from mistakes and accidents that didn't happen on purpose.
Happy accidents.
Happy accidents. So that's cool. Okay, so we're gonna follow up, but first of all, it was worth the wait and staying on top of you and getting you to join, because I think the people listening should, and I hope, enjoy it as much as I enjoyed it, which is pretty cool. So thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Any last minute words to the audience, to the millions of viewers that I have not listening?
Challenge the brief. Always ask what you can do different, more, better. Surprise people, and then you'll have more fun.
We're going to leave it at that. I hope you enjoyed the show, folks. Come back for the next one. Can't wait to see you, hear you, and your comments. Cheers.